Oh yeah, that one. All right. Then the prayers, we start the prayers. Until I reach enlightenment, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By accumulating merit and wisdom through generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Until I reach enlightenment, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By accumulating merit and wisdom through generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Until I reach enlightenment, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By accumulating merit and wisdom through generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment and anger that hold some close and others distant. I pay homage to the Sublime Mother of the victorious ones of the three times, the inexpressible, inconceivable, and indescribable perfection of wisdom, which is unborn, unceasing, and of the nature of space, and which is the object of realization of the self-knowing primordial wisdom. Okay. Okay, so I followed the discussion, but it's kind of difficult to try to understand what everyone means. I mean, in some cases harder than in other cases, so I hope I understood it correctly. Taruna asked at the very end, so that's easy. How do we analyze the breath? I guess it's about generating calm abiding or tranquil abiding and special insight, which we start with, for instance, the breath, just focusing on the breath, and then once we have calm abiding, we're able to focus on the breath for at least, 4 hours, and there's a special mental and physical pliancy. Then we switch to analysis. But since the object we're now very familiar with is the breath, we start to analyze the breath. So kind of like, what is the breath like? Does it feel shallow? Is it long? Is it short? I mean, it's not that much to analyze on the breath, but basically, how far does it move inside the body? I mean, there are plenty of things, right? Does it make a funny noise if your nose is blocked? No, I'm kidding. But anyway, I guess there are different ways just to observe it and check its length, its strength, and so forth, which is limited. But the point is not so much about getting to know the breath better. It's just getting the mind into that function, like to get the mind to analyze and see, does the tranquil abiding disappear? And it does. And once you feel, concentration focus is gone, you go back again. And you alternate faster and faster eventually until you bring the two together. Does that make sense? Oh, someone is hammering. Okay, that was the first thing. And then there were all these messages, and I tried to read them carefully. But I can't get into all of them. Just to mention 1 or 2 points. Someone said, and without mentioning any names, it's not important, but someone said that the self doesn't exist inherently, and that consciousness is a property of the universe that arises in conjunction with a suitable physical aggregate, I guess. So how is consciousness a property of the universe? I don't think so. I mean, it depends on what you mean with the property of the universe, like a part of the universe. Well, then everything that is in this universe would be a property of the universe. But also what's important to understand is The self doesn't exist inherently. Consciousness doesn't exist inherently. The universe doesn't exist inherently. In fact, there's not a single phenomenon that exists inherently or intrinsically. But they all exist, nevertheless. So there's a person, there's a self, there's consciousness, there's a universe. Yet it doesn't exist the way it appears, the way in which it appears to our mind. And property of the universe, no, in the Buddhist tradition, there's no talk of property of the universe. Does anyone know what that means, property of the universe? It's kind of like the universe is the owner of the consciousness, or is it kind of part of the universe? But that's the only way I could think of it, as like it's a part of the universe. And then that's true for self and the earth and our body. And, yeah.
Maybe she thinks the universe is conscious, and she sees the universe, it's as more a sort of, actually I can't identify it, but I heard that before. Mm-hmm. And that when we get enlightened, we become one with the consciousness of the universe. Maybe something like that.
Oh, so universe referring to the kind of universal consciousness. And when we become enlightened, we become all part of the ocean. Yeah, I've heard that before, the ocean of consciousness. But the thing is, when we say that, let's say this analogy works. From a Buddhist point of view, you could make that work. What is the ocean? All the enlightened minds. And now you become parts of all these enlightened minds. But it's not like the ocean becomes one single drop. Let's say your mind is one drop. It's still an individual drop. You're just one drop in the ocean, as part of many other minds in that sense. It's not like the ocean kind of becomes suddenly one single, and then you don't have an ocean. You see what I mean? Like, so if our mind, the enlightened mind, now becomes part of the enlightened ocean, well, they're still individual minds. They don't melt into another mind and they all become one. Yeah.
But as mind doesn't have a size or a special location, it would still be stretched.
Mind doesn't have a special location?
Is it so?
Does mind have a special location or not? Is there a special place where your mind is right now?
I don't think so.
So your mind is not in your body?
My mind is...
Is your mind maybe over here in the corner? Could it be? Could your mind be somewhere, is it in this corner or that corner or somewhere in McLeodganj?
I just don't think it has any properties of
being located in space. Okay, let me ask you something else. Does your consciousness ride on subtle energy?
I don't know yet.
According to the tantric explanation, Helen, according to the tantric explanation, right? Yes. In tantra, and that's usually accepted also in general, our mind is always located on the subtle energy wind, on the subtle energy, and that is physical. And this energy must be located somewhere.
Okay.
Right? Like, for instance, your very subtle mind, the energy is located at the center of your chest. So the tantric texts talk about that. And we can talk about it even without having received an empowerment or something. We can talk about it because we're just discussing this. So it's connected, or it rides on, they say. It's accompanied or even inseparably linked to a very subtle energy, and that is definitely located in your body. Which is why, yes, although it is immaterial, it is non-physical, it still has a place where it's located. Yes?
So how is it linked then?
Pardon?
You say it's linked, how is it linked?
How is it linked? Well, they're one nature. They're one nature, they're inseparably linked. I mean, how can I say how they're linked? One couldn't exist without the other. Does that help? No.
That's all one nature means, right? It doesn't explain.
Well, let's put it that way.
It's supposed to be in the same place.
Let's put it that way. Maybe if I say it in a different way, you have an entity, one part of it is energy. One part of it is energy. So from the point of view of this energy that it possesses, we label wind. From the point of view of this experiencing entity, we label mind. So you have energy that has the property of experience. And thus, from the point of view of experiencing its object, we call it mind. From the point of view of being energy, we call it energy wind. So causing, for instance, this energy, of course, has an effect on the body. It has effect on the body. If the energy is very calm, the mind is calm, the energy is calm. If the energy is calm, the mind, the body is calm, blood pressure goes down, and so forth. So in that way, yes, it's got that energetic property, and it's got the experiencing property, and on the basis of that, we call it either energy or experiencer. Does that help a little more?
So where would the eye consciousness be?
Pardon?
Eye consciousness be?
What about the eye consciousness?
Where
Yeah.
would that be? Is that in the same place?
That's in the same place, you mean?
I'm asking.
Yes, yes, definitely. In fact, I'm teaching a text that's based on this new book that has come out called Science and Philosophy in the Tibetan Buddhist classic texts. So in there, it specifies that the eye consciousness is located where the sense faculty is, because it needs the sense faculty, the energy that is associated with the eye sense power. I guess it interacts with the sense faculty, which is why it needs to be located where the sense faculty is. So the eye sense faculty is in this area, of course the visual cortex, etc., the eyes, the ears, again in this area, except for the body consciousness, which pervades the entire body. It says in that text, yeah. Yeah. Yes.
But has mind then a size?
Does mind have a size? Well, not in and of itself. But I guess if you're, for instance, a big person, your body consciousness is pervaded. You see, like, it pervades. I mean, it's difficult to really say, like, what does it mean to pervade the whole body? So it doesn't really have a size as such. I mean, it can expand and it can, become bigger and smaller, I guess. You know, like when we were children, as small children, I don't think your mind went really beyond. It's not like it didn't pervade the entire room. It was located where the energy, it can go a little bit beyond your body. I've heard that, I've read that in text, for instance. It can kind of go beyond, but it's karmically linked to this body. So this karmic link, therefore, prevents it from actually just leaving and roaming around. And thus, the size, I mean, the energy wind, a size, I mean, I guess it could expand and contract. So it doesn't have a size as such. It's pretty flexible.
Okay. Just thinking about the ocean again. So
yeah,
if it's located, it can still stretch the whole ocean. And if it's not bound to the body anymore by a karmic link.
It can, you see, they say the Buddha's mind is everywhere. So it can really expand. It can really expand. And the analogy of the ocean, of course, is limited in that if the Buddha's mind is everywhere and you become Buddha burnt, that goes well. Buddha band is a good Buddha band. BB. Buddha band is like, now Buddha Shakyamuni is everywhere, Buddha band is everywhere. So it's like, oops, do they become the same? No. They're still different individual mental continua, but there's no problem that they occupy the same space. I mean, it's not like physical things. We think like, I can't be in the same spot where you are. That doesn't work. But that's only because physical things, I mean, like, I should say material objects can't exist that way. I think with the energy that is so much subtler, it can be in the same spot. Right? But it's complicated. I don't know. I have to these questions. I've never come across a text where it says, well, watch out. So this big, the mind and no. No, of course, the mind doesn't have a size on itself, but of course, the energy, it's located. That's all it says. Yeah. Okay. That's one thing. And then someone says that in the Theravada tradition, mind doesn't go from life to life. I would like to see a source for that statement. I would think that is really true. I mean, from the very few Theravada teachings that I received, I've never heard that when you die, like there's no mind and nothing continues on. So if that's really true, I would like to get a source for that. I'd be interested. No, Aiden, you've got some training in.
I've never met any monk in Thailand that's stated that.
You've never met a monk in Thailand. You spent time there, okay, and you studied with them. Yeah, so it'd be interesting to hear where that is from. And also the person said that there is no living being so like the one living being is gone and then there's no new one, but from moment to moment it's never the same living being. I mean, from moment to moment you could never say like right now in this present moment, oh, it's gone again, this present moment, right? So the previous being is gone and in each moment there's a new living being. Therefore, that saying that there's no living being that's reborn, well, it's not the same living being. It's not the human called Kelsang Wangmo that's reborn. Maybe now it's the cow called Elsa or whatever, right? Now we call it something else. But the point is it's the same continuum. It's different, but it's the same continuum. Yeah, anyway. So then, then there was a discussion about free will. All right, it comes up sooner or later, and we'll discuss it more as part of the 6th chapter. I'm not going to say much about it. The whole disagreement lies with the word free. Free will. Do we have a will? Yes. Is it free? Okay. But what does free mean? Totally independent of anything? Well, we know in Buddhism nothing exists totally independent of anything. So it's dependent on other factors, on many factors. So there's a conventional free will. So conventionally, if you, let's say, you live in a family, you have a choice, your parents are open to you becoming an engineer or a doctor, well, we call it free will if in the end you decide. Is it totally independent of causes and conditions? Of course not. That would be impossible. To make a decision that's like out of space suddenly has no reason, no causes and conditions. I mean, we know impermanent phenomena, decisions are impermanent, impermanent phenomena depend on causes and conditions. But then if you live maybe, I don't know, in some country where, or it doesn't have anything to do with the country, but if you've got parents that insist you have to become an engineer, like no way, we'll not going to talk to you again, and we're not going to finance you and so forth. So you have no choice. I mean, there are people who have no choice. Or if you're imprisoned for life, you won't be able to become an engineer. You may get some vocal training or whatever. But the point, vocational training. But the point is that, yeah, if you're in prison, you have very limited choices. And in particular circumstances, there's no free will. Yeah, so in that case, we label absence of free will. And in the first case, we label free will. So there's a convention of free will. It's the same as saying independence. Does independence exist? Well, yeah, the United States, India, they're an independent country. There's no absolute independence. There's independence in terms of political decisions, certain economical decisions. We say this country is independent. Versus Tibet, that lacks that independence. But is there an absolute independence that a country is independent of everything else around them? No, that's independent of its people, independent of its states. That's impossible. Therefore, there's a conventional independence, but no absolute independence. So there's no absolute free will in the literal sense of the word. Free, completely free. Okay. And then we've got the tree that falls in the forest. And there's no one to perceive it. It went as far as like machines making cups and there's no one perceiving. Like, what? I didn't even try to understand the machine and the cups. But what I got was the forest and there's no one perceive it. Okay. Now, this is an interesting one. In general, from a Buddhist point of view, if a tree falls in the forest and there's no one to perceive it ever, it can't exist. But this doesn't mean in the moment when it falls, someone needs to perceive it. Some consciousness needs to be there. For something to exist, it must be perceived at some point in time. Now, I give you an example. Okay, no, first of all, no, I haven't finished that sentence. So if, for instance, there's no one there when it actually falls down, but you see the fallen tree, you can initially come to the conclusion, you can infer that this tree has fallen down. I mean, there's inference, there are laws of nature, and based on those, there's experience, etc., you can infer that this tree has fallen. So there's a mind that perceived it. It doesn't have to be directly perceived. I mean, let's just say even it's possible. It's actually impossible to have a place where there's no. But anyway, just for the sake of the argument, this is a bit like this. For something to be a kilo of what? Flour, for instance, a kilo of, flour. Let's take flour, a kg of flour. To be that kg, it must weigh 1 kilo, right? It must weigh 1 kg. But this doesn't mean for it to be kilo of flour right now, you have to weigh it right now, right? It doesn't have to be. We say, yeah, this is a kilo of something, flour or whatever, and to be that kilo, to qualify, to be existent as such a particular phenomenon, it must weigh 1 kilo. But it's not like every time you see it, it's like, oh, it's not a kilo now because no one is weighing it. It doesn't have to be in that moment, right? The analogy kind of works. I mean, it's a little stretched maybe. I don't know where that goes all the way, but basically that's the same idea. It can only exist if the mind perceives it, but it doesn't have to happen at that particular point. And the example I've given many times is of, for instance, the first Dalai Lama, Gyalwa Gendun Drop. That was his actual name. He was a disciple of Lama Tsongkhapa. And so he wasn't called Dalai Lama until, I think it was the third Dalai Lama, when one of the Khans, it wasn't Genghis Khan, it was a Khan in Mongolia, who decided to call him, he was the disciple of the third Dalai Lama. And Lama, of course, we know is the word for guru, and Dalai is the Mongolian word for ocean. So he gave him the title Ocean Lama. And knowing that the third was preceded by the second and the first, knowing about these two previous incarnations, not the ones before, I suppose, they posthumously called the second and the first Dalai Lama. Now, there was no one perceiving the first Dalai Lama, for instance, Gyalwa Gendun Drop, as Dalai Lama. No one called him that. No one had the thought, oh, there's the Dalai Lama. However, we still call him the first Dalai Lama, because later on we did. And in terms of the qualification of someone being called Dalai Lama, they were given. I mean, this is definitely a man-made thing, much more than a tree, for instance. But yeah, still, it was fine. And if we now call something, we discover a new species of animals. It happens all the time. People go into some remote area and they find a new type of frog. And then they say that frog, and they realize, oh, that frog must have been around for the last 1,000 years. So that frog wasn't called Potokoto frog or whatever, right? Whatever we call that frog. No, it was called, it wasn't even, didn't have a name that we refer to, but we can now say that frog lived there even before humans existed, for instance. So that's what we're saying. It doesn't have to be in that moment, in terms of labeling, for instance. Now, Aidan and I had a discussion after class last time, and this was about external existence. Do phenomena exist externally or not? From the Prasangika school point of view, the answer is yes. Now, as many of you probably heard, the Buddha in one of his sutras, or in one of those sutras, the Buddha has said, I do not contradict worldly conventions. Which is not to say, the Buddha didn't say our existence is in the nature of suffering and most of the world will disagree. Or the Buddha saying phenomena don't exist inherently and people go, oh, whoa, of course they do, right? So the Buddha didn't talk about that. He didn't say that these ideas, I cannot contradict them. Of course, he did contradict the world to a certain degree. However, he didn't contradict views that did not give rise to afflictions and suffering. So to believe, for instance, there's external existence, there is, I mean, that's a convention, external to my own body, right? So there's this external world. Believing in an external world does not give rise to afflictions. Believing into an external world that exists independent of consciousness, well, that's a different matter. But the Buddha didn't say that. He said, yes, I mean, at least in the Prasangika school point of view, he did say, well, there's external existence. So that's the high school point of view. There's no problems accepting that because it does not create afflictions in our mind. Inherently external, yeah, but then inherently internal or external, it always creates afflictions. If we were to say the world doesn't change moment by moment, there's a permanent world, again, that creates afflictions. However, he never said that. He just said there is an external world. So you see, anything that again, sorry, I need to specify. So we talk about worldly conventions, and of these worldly conventions, we check which views that the world holds in general creates afflictions. So that's not said to exist convention, or its object is not said to exist conventionally. And then, on the other hand, which views that are conventional in this world that do not contradict conventional logic. Yeah, if I were to say there's a cow flying through this room, that contradicts worldly logic, right? So I'm hallucinating, or I don't know, whatever. I'm just lying to you, because obviously if there was such a cow, you know, more people would see it, and so forth. I mean, whatever the reasoning is for the absence of such. Or if you take like certain optical illusions, that they're illusions, that they don't exist that way, we can actually prove. Therefore, these are of course not conventional existence. They don't exist in the first place. So on a conventional level, they can be disproven to exist. But you don't need to talk about whether they generate afflictions or not. They just simply don't exist. If you misperceive the ears of a rabbit, like you've got a rabbit with like these long ears, and because they're too long, they kind of flip over, and from afar you perceive horns of a rabbit, well, they don't exist. There actually are ears, but they look like horns. So in that sense, yeah, external existence. I thought that was something I wanted to mention, since we discussed it after class last time. And this discussion comes up again and again. What about the Chittamatra school? Like, why is it not true? Because why would why? This goes totally against all our experiences. And on a conventional level, yeah, there's consciousness. There's an external world. And yeah, finally, from the high school's point of view, it's correct to say there's an external world. And the Chittamatra school was only taught because we're so used to just thinking of the external world. Materialism, as someone put really nicely, as a very powerful antidote to materialism that is, especially at this day and age, has become the prevalent view, I guess, especially in the modern world, in modern countries. And so what is a powerful antidote to that? That is Chittamatra. But that's just to kind of move away from that one extreme. Eventually then to hopefully, meet the Prasangika school that says external phenomena exist. It's not just mind, and mind and the external world equally lack inherent existence. Okay, all right, that's that. And then if you go back to the text, we started with the text on page 37, which is a general presentation of the grounds of a bodhisattva, which is also the actual body now of the text. Lama Tsongkhapa briefly mentions there's a causal ground, there's a resultant ground. So we start off with the bodhisattva stages, and then the resultant would then be the Buddha's mind. Then we talk about how to practice in general, according to Nagarjuna's system. Then there's the outline practicing on the ordinary person's level or stage, and then presenting the grounds of someone who has realized emptiness directly. Okay, these are the three outlines that were introduced. And then of these, the first one, of course, how do we practice in general? We follow, of course, although we're studying Acharya Chandrakirti's text, we are studying this text in order to understand Nagarjuna's text, Fundamental Wisdom, that is the root. So it's a little confusing with all the different names, but really if you study philosophy, there's only like maybe 10 names you need to remember, the most important names. I mean, over 2,600 years, there are actually relatively few names that you really need to remember. Arya Nagarjuna, Acharya Chandrakirti, and then a few more that are mentioned in here. So these new words that take some time to get used to. However, it's good to know them. And so they're introduced basically in this first part. But the point is here that Lama Tsongkhapa explains, entering the middle way, it basically explains Arya Nagarjuna's system, and Arya Nagarjuna is seen as the source. He's the pioneer of the Madhyamika. He's the trailblazer of the Madhyamika view. the Buddha taught the Madhyamika view, but if you listen to all the teachings, if you were able to now listen directly to all the teachings of the Buddha, it'd be very difficult to filter out which one is Prasangika, which one is not. Very complicated, because the Buddha taught according to a person's predisposition, interest, and so forth. And if it was beneficial to teach X, Y, and Z to them, and then teach something totally different to someone else, it'd get really confusing. But Nagarjuna did us a great service. He took all the teachings, the sutras of the Buddha that had been written down, and structured them. And basically very clearly laid out the view of Madhyamika. In his text, very clearly showed us which sutras of the Buddha can be taken literally, that is, that literally present the view of the Prasangika, and which ones require interpretation. And in that way, he clearly laid out the Prasangika system in his text, Fundamental Wisdom. So it's kind of like a decodifier, if you like. If you want to know, if you just read the teachings of the Buddha, just the sutras, if you were around at the time of the Buddha, you probably had a mind that could grasp this meaning. Just having the incredible virtue or merit to be around the Buddha, to not be at another continent when the Buddha is in India, but to actually see the Buddha, hear the Buddha. They say a kind of founding Buddha, a historical Buddha like Buddha Shakyamuni, who performs what are called the 10 enlightened actions or 10 enlightened deeds, you need to have incredible merit. And so these beings are probably more likely, or have actually understood what the Buddha said. And of course the Buddha taught at a time when a certain teaching style was prevalent. And since teaching style changed, people don't necessarily understand 500-600 years later. And then Nagarjuna came along and made it so much easier for us. And his Fundamental Wisdom is just, it's not a very long text, basically. All right, so that's what we're studying, basically, but through the medium of Acharya Chandrakirti's text. We're studying Arya Nagarjuna's text. And here, there's special attention given to Arya Nagarjuna. He's like a doctor, because we all have mental problems. Remember last time I talked about this? So in a way, I gave you the example, like if I read about addicts, like a person addicted to alcohol or drugs, I always find myself, right? So I definitely have an addictive personality. When I hear about people with certain other, like autism or bipolar disorder, and if I read some of the symptoms, and I think, I have my moments. So it's like I may not be considered to be in what they call, in the spectrum, on the spectrum. I may not be considered that, but in comparison to a Buddha, I've got all of these. In comparison to the totally healthy mind of a Buddha, where all obstructions eliminated, I have every single mental problem there is. I'm obsessive. I'm totally obsessive. Obsessed with something that doesn't even exist. My own projected I. So yeah, I've got big OCD. So therefore the Buddha is like a doctor. A Buddha, here Arya Nagarjuna is described as, or we can describe him here as a Buddha, a savior. I prefer to call him like a doctor. And of course the Buddha, based on the great physician, the Buddha himself. So we want to find out what medicine and treatment does Nagarjuna offer us as part of this fast outline. And then it says, I may have read this already, but might as well do it again. At the end of page 39, all right, I already read this, but I'll just do it again. So Arya Nagarjuna is often called, that's the explanation, the second Buddha because of his unparalleled explanation of the middle way, Madhyamika. But merely knowing that this system exists is not enough. We must study it carefully and reflect on it critically. So just knowing its existence, we have to really understand it. So again, reflection doesn't mean blind faith. And there's going to be an explanation on what kind of faith, the different features, there are at least 2 features of faith in this tradition. We'll come to that later on, they'll be mentioned. But anyway, so no blind faith, but thoughtful analysis, testing Nagarjuna's reasoning against logic and personal experience. Very important. So that's our job, basically, when we study something, to be skeptical, to question. Why is this important? Because once we have a deep inner conviction that Arya Nagarjuna's explanation of the path is correct, we're first of all safeguarded from being misled by false path. So many. I mean, nowadays we talked about AI. I told you, if you Google, if you just search for something on an AI, there's some stuff that comes up. Some stuff is correct and a lot of stuff isn't. And it sounds totally correct. So if we understand Nagarjuna, really study it, well, you may use the AI. I was a little cynical. I said you could use it to calculate. Of course, you can use it for more. If you use the AI, you can use it for, I don't know, whatever you can use it for. Ask about general things, whatever. But with the Dharma, you can't trust it. I mean, at this point, it definitely makes things up. And because it uses the data of the internet, and there's so many texts on the Dharma that are not reliable. And so it's basically taking it from there, not being able to distinguish which one is reliable and which one is not. They all have really nice comments at the end. So anyway, so first of all, we are misguided from going a wrong path. And of course also we can practice more effectively. So anyway, so we deviate from the authentic, we don't deviate from the authentic method to achieve best possible or optimal mental health. It's all about that. This shows the great importance of thorough understanding. Conviction in the past must come from reasoning and analysis, not from devotion alone. Again, devotion is nice, it's a beneficial state of mind, but it's only secondary. Yeah. Studying Arya Nagarjuna's system carefully is like fully grasping a doctor's diagnosis and treatment plan. If we understand how the therapy works and why it is effective, we won't be, this part I also read. We won't be deceived by quacks or by someone offering ineffective or harmful medicine. So our conviction really protects us. And of course, what's most important is that we can practice effectively. We're convinced. If you're always doubting, right? Like, oh, maybe it's like this, maybe it's like that. And even though that's not mentioned here, but yeah, it's like, I'm not sure this is better or that. But once you're convinced, then you know what to do. You look at your own mind, okay, got more of an issue with anger, got more of an issue with this affliction, and you know what to do and you know why you're doing it, how this is eventually important. So then Lama Tsongkhapa says, those engaged in study and reflection who, however much they engage in the study of the treatises, of the systems of the great charioteers. We had those charioteers again before. Those were mentioned before. The great charioteers. Such a weird word, but it's in Tibetan just as unusual. Never find ascertainment with respect to their own personal practice are clearly, so those who really study the treatises and the three great charioteers are mentioned in the explanation. But if they never find ascertainment with respect to their own personal practice, are clearly not approaching the study and reflection in an effective manner. So it needs to be brought back to our own personal practice. As such, even if they were to strive hard in the great vehicle or in the universal vehicle, the Mahayana, they would fail to extract its value. So very important to bring it back to your own practice. So who are the great charioteers mentioned here? They were also mentioned, as I just said, in Lama Tsongkhapa's promise to compose the text at the beginning of illuminating the intent. So at the very beginning, what we studied the first term, Lama Tsongkhapa is paying homage to his teacher, to Nagarjuna, Manjushri, and so on. So he also mentions the three great charioteers. They refer to three great Nalanda masters. It's only three, it's not that many. So someone called Acharya Buddhapalita. Acharya Buddhapalita. Okay. Then someone called Acharya Chantakirti, we know him. And then the great Bodhisattva Shantideva. I'm using them with the honorifics. And yeah, Bernd, thank you for that. I'll change that. You found that I forgot the honorific. Sometimes I was like, maybe I can leave the honorific. Do I have to say Acharya every time? And I thought if I ask Geshe Damdi, he probably says yes. So I just added them. And then Shantideva, he's usually called the great Bodhisattva. The great Bodhisattva. So I used the English here. Geshe Kelsang Wangmo-la, they say Geshe Kelsang, so great Bodhisattva Shivala or Shantideva. So these three are said to be the three charioteers: Acharya Buddhapalita, Acharya Chandakirti, and the great Bodhisattva Shantideva. They are known as the three charioteers of the Prasangika chariot tradition. Now, chariot, what is this chariot? I mean, who rides chariots? Maybe in Central Park, I think they used to have them. Maybe they're banned now. I've heard somewhere they banned the chariots with the horses or whatever. But, in India, of course, in those days when Acharya Chandrakirti's text was composed, of course, they had chariots. And even before that. So the analogy of the chariot is used. Vehicle, path, anyway. So here the Prasangika chariot tradition or Prasangika school, whose philosophy, like a chariot, carries practitioners to their goals of liberation and awakening. So that's why this analogy is used, or this metaphor is used. So the Prasangika school is called, is described as a chariot. The Prasangika is regarded as the highest of the two Madhyamika schools of Buddhism, the other being Svatantrika. So the high school is the Madhyamika, the middle way. But there is some distinction, which is why they've been subdivided. It seems like they're just doing it to confuse us, but actually it helps to avoid confusion. Because although there's Madhyamika, there's this Madhyamika philosophical school that the Buddha taught. So think, the Buddha taught all these different philosophical schools. They were not made up. So he taught Madhyamika, those whose minds were ready. But even then he slightly distinguished between Svatantrika, where he allowed for inherent existence. Thank you. Right? I mean, it's like, when you study this for a while, and you think about inherent or the lack of inherent existence, it's like, it's kind of like it kind of makes sense, but then again, it seems like you get something out of nothing. Basically, the idea of lack of inherent existence is, or inherent existence, let's put it that way, if they're hypothetically, if things existed intrinsically, I should be able to find an essence that is the phone within this phone. Or I should be able to find an essence within this table based on which I call this table. That's the argument, saying, well, it's made of atoms, this table is made of atoms, and this wall is made of atoms. On the very subtle level, there's no difference between these very subtle atoms. But one is a table and one is a wall. Unless, and this is the argument of those schools that accept inherent existence, including the Svatantra Madhyamika, they say there must be something from the side of the object. Otherwise, there would be no difference between a table and a wall. There must be something. Because just the parts, they're just subtle atoms. So basically, there's no difference. So what distinguishes one from the other? Therefore, in the non-Prasangika school, Prasangika is the high school, and they say nothing exists inherently. But the lower schools have a hard time with that. And so the Buddha said, okay, basically taught that for the time being, to get used to the idea such as nothing exists without mind and so forth. And when their minds were ready, to then introduce them to the Prasangika school. But in the meantime, you studied the Svatantrika. And yeah, this idea, you can find something. There's still something there that distinguishes me from you, or this table from the wall. It kind of seems, okay, I'm glad. I'm glad that's true. Of course, the Prasangika school says you never find anything. You look for the table within the table, you never find anything. You don't find the table, but you don't even find the parts of the table. When you take a car, for instance, where's the car within its parts? You take it apart, no car. Then you look at the steering wheel. Where's the steering wheel within the steering wheel? Not there. Where's the tire within the tire? Where's the clutch within the clutch? I mean, I can name a few parts of a car, so I'm running out of names. But anyway, you get the point. So therefore, each of these parts, again, is subdivided into subparts. And they can't be found. And you never find anything. So in the end, you can go endlessly. You can endlessly search for some essence that is not merely labeled on the basis of something other than itself. on the basis of its parts, which are not it. And you never find anything. So that seems like, what? You can get something out of nothing, right? And so to avoid the sense, whoa, this is scary, the Buddha introduced to some people, okay, nothing exists truly, nothing exists without appearing to the mind, but there's some essence there, right? Makes sense, doesn't it? So we need the Svatantrika schools, really helpful, just as a stepping stone to a deeper school, a higher school. So you have, therefore, the two Madhyamika schools. Who is the pioneer? Who, after the Buddha, was the trailblazer of the Madhyamika school in general? Nagarjuna, Arya Nagarjuna. But in his writings, it wasn't really clear. This is Svatantrika, this is Prasangika. He didn't distinguish. If you read his fundamental wisdom, yes, we understand, we believe from his reasonings, he didn't indicate in any way that he believed in inherent existence. But he also didn't literally say they don't exist inherently. So other authors very clearly, they clearly indicated that they believe in inherent existence, right? There are some, which is why we categorize them as, for instance, followers of the Svatantrika. Bhavaviveka, for instance, one great master, Acharya Bhavaviveka, he is said to be a follower of the Svatantrika because he clearly, it's from his writings, it became clear that he doesn't believe in inherent, he believes in some autonomous, some inherent existence. With Nagarjuna, that's not the case, but he also didn't clearly delineate these two schools so that you know, so Svatantrika is not the highest school, it's Prasangika. That wasn't clear. What did he delineate? He compared basically the Madhyamika school to the Chittamatra school and refuted the Chittamatra school. So it became clear that the school that is next, that's closest to the Madhyamika school is the Chittamatra school, and he clearly refuted that. So in that way, he's called a Madhyamika trailblazer. Someone who very clearly explained which sutras are from the Buddha, are from the point of view of the Madhyamika, and which ones are not. Which ones are therefore need to be interpreted, and which ones are definitive, can be accepted the way they were taught. So in that sense, because Nagarjuna made that clear, he was a human being, has to be human, because there are celestial beings as well, but that doesn't count. So a human being in this world who took the Buddha's teachings and clearly delineated the Madhyamika view, was the first one to do so. Take all the teachings and say, this is Madhyamika, and this needs to be interpreted. That was Nagarjuna, and therefore he's called the Prasangika, the Madhyamika trailblazer. But as I said before, he didn't distinguish between Svatantrika and Prasangika Madhyamika. That he didn't delineate, so therefore he doesn't get the title of Prasangika Madhyamika trailblazer. Okay, so, but now here we're looking at the Prasangika Madhyamika trailblazer. That's not Nagarjuna. So here you have three beings which are not called trailblazers. Well, they're known as the three charioteers. So the Prasangika is regarded as the highest. Okay, as will be explained later, the chief distinction between these two schools is the Svatantrikas accept intrinsic existence, whereas the Prasangikas refute it. I just said that, right? Prasangika doesn't accept that something can be found. Intrinsic means there's something inside that makes this a table, right? That's intrinsic existence. So there's something inherent in this table that distinguishes it from everything that is not a table. So it's intrinsic. You can find it. You look for it within this object. There's something intrinsic, a table. Therefore, it's an intrinsically existent table. Does that make sense? So the Buddha, of course, accepted Nagarjuna, Arya Nagarjuna, and these other great masters accepted there's a table, but they said it comes from the mind. That this is a table, it's only because we label it a table. From its own side, intrinsically, there's nothing that says it's a table. But to us, it feels as if I call this a table because it is one from its own side. Not that it's a table because I call it that. You see the difference? It's the exact opposite. For me, I believe I call this a table because it's a table from its own side. In the Prasangika school, no. It's only a table because I call it that. It's not a table because it's one from its own side. It's a table because it's labeled as such. I mean, it doesn't have to be me to label it that. But as a convention, we call that a table. Certain people do. A certain amount of people. Right? That's the difference. All right. Now, moreover, the Prasangikas chiefly employ a particular method. So it's not just that they don't accept intrinsic existence, they also are a particular philosophical school that developed in India, or that was already introduced by the Buddha, but then followers of the Prasangika school, of course, existed in India. And they also employed a particular method of logical reasoning, which is really beautiful. So, except for the Prasangikas, most of the others would say, for instance, you reason with someone. Okay, the self doesn't exist inherently because it's dependently risen. That's called a syllogism. Well, sometimes they can be employed. They're helpful, of course, that kind of reasoning. But they're pretty much in the lower schools, other than the Prasangika, they say, first of all, these reasonings exist intrinsically. Okay, that's already a problem. But moreover, they think those are the most effective. You tell someone A is B because it's C. And the Prasangika school says that can be helpful, but most effective is point out the contradictions in the other person's view. Don't say A is not B. I mean, you can say that all day long. They don't see the contradictions in their own view because they believe that A is not B. First, we should point out the absurdity of the view that A is not B. For instance, if you believe phenomena exist inherently, then the absurdity would be you should be able to find, for instance, the object. And it should be one with its parts or separate from its parts, right? I mean, is it its parts or does it exist separate from its parts? What you would say the table exists here, where its parts are located. Okay, we have a location. But then you look at its parts, we say the parts of the table. So there's definitely something other than the parts, which is the table. Is it one with the parts or is it separate? So without saying it's neither, so better don't say it exists inherently. It's like saying, let's say it is. Search for it. And then when you go through all these absurdities, like if you have one view, it has consequences, it has ripples, right? If I believe whatever, I'm not impermanent, then it would mean you're not impermanent and nothing is impermanent and I wouldn't change and I couldn't eat and I couldn't poo and I couldn't do anything, right? If I wasn't impermanent. So it has ripple effects that are totally absurd. Not ripple effects, it's like it has consequences. So instead of telling me, oh, you're wrong, it's impermanent for whatever reason, okay, let's assume you're permanent. Right? Let's see, does that make sense? Does that? And so this way of arguing in the Prasangika school is reflected in Buddhist debate. In Buddhist debate, when we debate, you debate exactly like that. Someone has a view and you say it follows. Right? It follows such and such. Yeah? So instead of saying this is wrong, I'll give you a simple example. I've given you that example many times and some of you may know this. But for instance, in philosophy, and this is just a simple example which has nothing to do with philosophy, you start off with that kind of example. So we're not very consequent when we talk about, for instance, colors and living beings, for instance, right? We would say a color, for instance, white must be a color, right? We all agree that white must be a color. And that a horse is a living being. Would you agree? And there's a difference between a color and a living being. They're not the same thing. But then, if someone were to say, well, take the subject, a white horse. it follows it is white. If you agree, right? It's not white, it's not a color. I mean, we say that in everyday life, but, you know, strictly speaking, it's a living being. So you could then, instead of saying, oh, the white horse is not white because it's a living being, you say, the subject, the white horse, it follows it's not a living being. It follows it's not a living being because it's not a horse. Why? The reason is not established. No, it's not a horse because it's a color. It's a color because it's white. So you see, instead of telling them, a white horse is not white, you're wrong, you're telling them, okay, then it's just not a horse. It's not a living being. It's a color. Yeah. So this is just a silly example with the white horse and stuff. We start off with that. These are the first examples that we can relate to. But of course, we could also say, I'm not permanent. I'm permanent. I'm permanent. You're all impermanent. I'm permanent. So it follows you're permanent. Yes, I agree. It follows you don't change. Yes. It follows you don't age. It follows you're the same as when you were 5 years old. It follows you don't get up in the morning. It follows you know, it's like, what? Okay. And eventually, and so in the debate, I mean, you don't just say the way, I mean, the other person answers and then you go back and forth. But the point is, you keep saying it follows. From what you said, it follows this, it follows that. And a skillful debater is then able to present so many contradictions that the other person says, I give up. No, this is too absurd. It becomes too absurd. And you may take it to an extreme, a lot of absurdities, you know, but at some point you just like, and even if you don't admit it in the debate, you go home and you think, no, can't say that. Can't say that. That doesn't work. So that's a very effective way, and that's a unique way introduced in the Prasangika school and taken on by the traditions. The Nalanda tradition, they debated using consequences, and so did in Tibet. I mean, for more than 1,000 years, they've been debating in many of the monastic institutions. Very helpful tool. I mean, a tool, not an end in itself, you know, just a means, but still highly effective for certain people. Not for everyone, possibly, but for some people, very helpful. So that is based on the Prasangika method of using consequences, logical consequences, as they're called, like logical absurdities, pointing them out. All right, so instead of putting forward autonomous syllogisms, like intrinsically existent, as they say, autonomous, they're intrinsically able to prove something. That's impossible. There's nothing intrinsically able to prove anything, just as there's no intrinsic table. So they say autonomous syllogisms. That's why the Svatantrikas in English are called the autonomy school, because they believe in these syllogisms, not only in the the power of A is not B because it's C kind of argument, but according to them, they're autonomous. They exist inherently or intrinsically as a logical statement that proves something exclusively. Okay. All right. So going back to now these three masters, Acharya Buddhapalita, Acharya Chandrakirti, and the great Bodhisattva Shantideva, they very clearly, well, no, they didn't but they're definitely Prasangikas. They're Prasangikas, and they're called charioteers for three reasons, different reasons. One is the initiator of the Prasangika school, or Prasangika chariot, using here the word chariot. So really it's the Prasangika school. So one is the initiator, one is the trailblazer, and one is the upholder. So it seems like I made this up. I didn't make this up. This is really in the commentaries. So Acharya Buddhapalita, Acharya Chandrakirti, and the great Bodhisattva Shantideva. What is the difference between these three Tibetan Buddhist terms that all use the chariot metaphor, and who they refer to is the following. The initiator of the Prasangika chariot tradition is Acharya Buddhapalita. Very important person, Buddhapalita. His Holiness taught his text. It's available in English. You'll see I put a little comment. That's footnote number 9. It gives you the name of is it that? No, it's not. I usually, somewhere is the name of the English translation. I thought wait. Pardon? yeah, the English translation. The English, I put a footnote? Ian Covelin, I think his name is. Let me just call. Ian. No, I didn't, I forgot.
Is it not the second last
It's here?
slide?
Oh, which footnote is it?
9.
Oh, it is there. Oh, I put it there. Oh, I didn't read the whole footnote. Okay, great.
End of 40.
Oh, it's like, no, I forgot. Because I always want to give you, if the text has been translated into English, now I lost it. If it has been translated into English, I want you to know. So if you want to read it, because there's really just 10 texts maybe that are really important if you want to study Madhyamika. I mean, there are plenty more, but these are the original texts that all the other commentaries rely on. Sorry, I just totally lost where I was.
End of 40.
Oh yes, now I found it. Okay, great. Number 9. Oh yes, there is. Oh, James, Ian James. That's why I couldn't find it. All right. Anyway, so the first one is Buddhapalita. Born in the 5th century, probably in southern India. In some commentaries it says Hamsakrita in the region of Tambala. From a young age, he took ordination, entered Nalanda University, and studied especially the works of Arya Nagarjuna under Acharya Sangarakshita. That was his teacher. I put a little footnote so these names mean something to you. So there's very little known about him, but you know, it's interesting, there were some important figures, but because they didn't leave any texts behind, we don't know about them. But in a way, this Acharya Sangarakshita was important because he was a teacher of Buddhapalita. Anyway, you can read that or just ignore it. But he later, this Acharya Buddhapalita, he later became established as a master at Nalanda and passed away around 540. So he is best known for introducing the Prasanga system by presenting the use of logical consequences. Now, in Arya Nagarjuna's text, we don't find anything that points at the difference between Prasangika and Svatantrika. I mean, he didn't say phenomena don't exist inherently, and he didn't talk about, for instance, logical consequences, which is why, although it's understood that he was a follower of the Prasangika, but his text wasn't clearly laid out that way. So he's not honored with the term of Prasangika charioteer. Okay, right. But the initiator, so the one who really initiated the whole Prasangika tradition was Acharya Buddhapalita. Then you have the trailblazer. He's the most important. That is Acharya Chandakirti. For he clearly delineated the Prasangika school by extensively refuting the Chittamatra and Svatantrika schools. So the Chittamatra, which is different from Madhyamika, and the Svatantrika clearly delineated that. Although Arya Nagarjuna was a follower of the Prasangika school here, and Acharya Chandakirti, based in his entry in the middle way in other texts, Although Arya Nagarjuna was a follower of the Prasangika school, and Acharya Chandakirti based his entry in the middle way in other texts on Arya Nagarjuna's work, the latter, Arya Nagarjuna, is regarded as the trailblazer of the Madhyamika, but not of the Prasangika Madhyamika school, because his treatises, such as the Fundamental Wisdom, do not clearly differentiate between the Prasangika and the Svatantrika schools, and are accepted by both proponents. Right? His treatise is seen equally as a text even from the Svatantrika school point of view. This is because he does not explicitly negate intrinsic existence in the way that distinguishes the two schools. Acharya Chandakirti did that. It wasn't necessary. It was not like, Arya Nagarjuna, you got it wrong, you messed up. It's not like that. It just wasn't necessary at the time, right? Arya Nagarjuna did what was most beneficial. His disciples greatly benefited from the Fundamental Wisdom. But us later on, if we read it, we get the Madhyamika view, but we don't necessarily understand that Nagarjuna actually talked about the Prasangika, which is why this title goes to someone else. It's not like they care, but it's just for us to know that person we can rely on to really understand what the Prasangika is all about, right? So Buddhapalita was helpful, but he only initiated it, didn't go all the way. Acharya Chandakirti went all the way. So he's the one to focus on. And yeah, luckily we're studying him. Right? Okay. And then you have the upholder of the Prasangikacharya tradition. Here it's the great Bodhisattva Shantideva, but of course there are many others as well. Why does he mention only these three? Well, it'll be explained in a moment. So the great Bodhisattva Shantideva is here called the upholder, who upholds this tradition in his Bodhisattva way of life and Compendium of Training, 2 texts, both translated into English. He should start reading Compendium of Training, because we always read the first one, that's nice, makes us feel good, and it's very important, of course, but the second one, really, we need to pay more attention, and now that it's translated into English, no reason why not. It'll be difficult, but parts of it we'll understand. The great Bodhisattva Shantideva was born in the 8th century Western India, the son of Acharya Chandakirti. I didn't give his life story because I did in the beginning. I already spoke about him. Well, I didn't speak about the great Bodhisattva Shantideva yet. He was born in the 8th century, Western India, the son of a royal family, and from an early age was devoted to Manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom, who is said to have appeared to him in visions. On the eve of his coronation as royal prince, king, whatever, he dreamt of Manjushri seated on his throne, which he took as a sign to renounce worldly life. He left the palace, took ordination, and entered Nalanda University. There he appeared idle to his peers, earning the nickname the monk who only eats and sleeps. Right? He wasn't interested in what people thought about him, he was actually meditating when other people were, going out about. He was just in his room, lying down, seemed to be just sleeping, and practiced. But then, when pressed to teach, so the others started to make fun of him, and when pressed to teach, he astonished everyone, very surprised. He then gave a spontaneous teaching on the Bodhisattva way of life, and then he became a hotshot. But until that time, he could just practice on his own, wasn't interested in name and fame, so yeah, he composed this particular text. From then on, he was revered as a great Bodhisattva whose works became central to the tradition of the universal vehicle. So why does Lama Tsongkhapa emphasize the 3 charioteers? So initiators, just one. Trailblazers, just one. Upholders, many, not just Shantideva, but his own interpretation rests largely on their insights. So what Buddhapalita said in his text, called Buddhapalita, or a commentary on the fundamental wisdom, what Arya Chandakirti said, in particular in this text, and lastly, the great Bodhisattva Shantideva said in these 2 texts. Okay. So everything you study goes back to them. Everything we study, but we never read these texts. Oh, they're difficult. But it would be nice to actually go back to the sources and eventually go back to the sutras. That as well. Of course, Arya Chandakirti, basically in this explanation, it becomes clear which sutras need to be interpreted and which ones are definitive. Which ones are provisional and which ones are definitive. So we can go back to the sutras. Studying all this, we can go back to the sutras. We understand it now. That's why we study this. Not to ignore the words of the Buddha. But the words of the Buddha right now can be easily misunderstood. There's no eye, no ear, no nose. That can be misunderstood, right? Now studying these different texts, the goal is, of course, and His Holiness says that, don't leave them on the altar. You know how beautifully they wrap the sutras and the treatises, the Indian commentaries on the sutras next to the altar. And he's criticizing that. Don't just have them on the altar. Take them down and read them. Well, nowadays they've been printed in book form. You can actually read the sutras. You don't have to take them literally down and have an empty altar or something. You can find them online. So it's very important to go back to the words of the Buddha himself. Okay. Having mentioned the 3 great charioteers, Lama Tsongkhapa explains that some people study extensively, reading and debating the works of the three great charioteers and other masters. Yet despite all this effort, they never reach ascertainment. Okay. Meaning a firm, what is this ascertainment? A firm, unshakable understanding that truly guides our practice. So a lot of people, just their knowledge remains intellectual and abstract, not something they can apply in daily life. And that's just a waste of time. And there's danger studying, right? If you study just to accumulate more knowledge and be able to debate and all that, sooner or later you need to apply this to your own life. The debate is just a tool. And the point is to gain that kind of ascertainment. So sometimes people from other traditions may criticize Lama Tsongkhapa, saying, oh, he was interested in study. But if you read this, no, he's saying that it's just a tool. Let go of the tool when it's enough. And really get down to practice, really apply it to your own life. And Lama Tsongkhapa, when you read his biography, I briefly mentioned it in the beginning, but not too much. But if you want to read this entire biography, there's a new one out. It's been out for a few years now by Geshe Kelsang. So incredible, like how he practiced all the time in this, went into retreat, did so many retreats, but did emphasize the need for at least studying the basics or understand the Dharma before you meditate on it. Okay. All right, so their knowledge remains until, when this happens, it shows that study and reflection are being approached incorrectly. So if we don't apply this, then it's just a waste of, then we might as well study something else. They may be more concerned with collecting information than with thinking deeply about it, or they treat philosophy as debate material rather than practical instructions. So very important. The text points out gently but firmly that it's not enough to be learned. The real question is whether study and reflection change how we live and bring the practices into our daily lives. So let's go back in time. When I first studied, okay, I was a huge jerk, so now I'm a little better. Initially, I got angry after a second. Now I get angry after 2 seconds. That's an improvement. So room for improvement, 3 seconds and so forth. It is like being sick. Instead of following the prescribed treatments, spending all our time collecting medical books, memorizing terms, and debating cures. Right? You got the medicine right in front of you and you're like, okay, let's debate whether that works or not. If it's, of course, you could debate and also take the medicine, apply it. No matter how much knowledge we accumulate, unless we actually apply it to our own illness, we will never get better. Yeah? So whatever you learn, okay, whatever we learned, like today, basically anything you learn today, let's not ignore Buddha Palita, let's not ignore Chandakirti, they have the title charioteers. Whatever we learn, there may be just little things. Which I remembered something. I remember something. I wanted to answer a question someone asked, and I forgot to do it in the beginning. I do it now, if you don't mind. Take a short break. I think it's a really important one. I've never been asked this question. Never. Someone asked me this, I don't remember at least. Someone asked me this question about Dharma practice, practicing the Dharma, getting more into the Dharma. And so, actually, this day and age, we are very much taught since we were young, get a good job, make enough money, save some money, be secure, right? That's kind of the way of the world. So this person is also at a point where they're deciding, should I, practice the Dharma more, or should I just get a job and make a lot of money? Because, their parents expect that, and it's kind of like deep within us. You have to be secure, right? If you're a Dharma practitioner, you're very likely not to be super rich unless you, have some inheritance or whatever. No, so the thing is, I did ask myself that when I first became a nun, of course, and as I went on being a nun, my sister, she's got so much money, or my dad, kind of, but it goes to his wife, so it's not even anything to do with me. So I was thinking, I had my moments, as a new nun, and even as I continued, am I going to be okay? Right? Do I have enough? Or am I going to starve one day? You know, what about money? And kind of like, wouldn't it be nice if I had millions and I wouldn't have to worry or something, right? I mean, talking about being modest, kind of thinking of millions. No, but then I thought, what if I did have that? What if I had a lot, right? What would I do with it? Do I want to go and take a vacation somewhere? No, that's boring. Do I want to buy a lot of stuff? No, I have to look after all this stuff. I'll be so busy, I can't do what I like to do. So, I mean, I need certain basic things, but they're not that expensive. And once I have them, I'm not going to buy new ones. I have them already. So how much do I really need? And having more and spending more is just distracting, right? I mean, my sister, she buys stuff and then she has to sell the old stuff. Or her 2 garages are full. The car never fits in, you know. So, I know she never listens to this, so it's fine. But the thing is... No, but the thing is, like, she loves buying things, you know. Amazon knows her better than anyone in our neighborhood. But it doesn't make her happier. She just buys more and more and more, and then she has to look after it, and she worries about it. And she's so busy buying stuff all the time. First, she's busy buying it. Then she's busy looking after it. And then she's busy working to buy more. Right? So she has all this money. She does have, her husband does as well. Then they go on the trips. Okay, great. Yeah, maybe if you like to go on trips. I don't like it. That was a time I liked to travel, and now it's like so boring, right? Go to a hotel, check in, lie down. It's not your bed. Okay, then take some pictures. You know, it's like, and then what? Take some photos, say you were there, and move on. I mean, what's the point? You know, get a dilly belly and whatever. I mean, really? I mean, it's so tiring. First you need to get there, spend all that money. It's not comfortable. You can say you were there, send some postcards, get a magnet on your fridge, and it's like, wow, I've done all this stuff. I don't see any point in that. I've seen that country. Yeah, I've been exactly in one town, and in that town I've been in 3 places. I don't know what the country looks like. I've never talked to anyone, only our guide, you know, that's the only person from that country. I mean, honestly, what is all that traveling? And then you go to the beach, right? Turn into a tandoori chicken. Create, you know, burn your skin to such a degree that you now need to buy all this wrinkle cream and get all these moles reduced, you know, because you've got skin cancer. I mean, like, really? Is that what life is all about? So if I had all this money, what would I do? Oh, I could spend it to be generous. I could, you know, practice generosity. But that's not why I wanted the money in the first place. It wasn't all about giving it all away and being, you know, super generous. And anyway, even if I give away a little, the point is giving away. So the modern life does suggest we need security. But do I feel safer with money, or do I feel safer with the Dharma? Do I feel safer doing certain practices? And the good thing is, if we practice the Dharma in a pure way, I mean, we can all do that. Instead of showing off and meditating in McLeodganj on the main bus station so everyone sees me, that would be an impure way. No, just really trying to practice as much as I can. Then in the text it says, if you're a monk or nun, you will never starve. And I think that's true for lay people as well. It mentions monks and nuns because they don't have a job and they may be more worried than lay people. But I think that's true for everyone. I've never heard of a practitioner, ordained or lay, who starved. And when they're good practitioners, if they need surgery, people help them. It's incredible. I know so many stories of people, yeah, they worry, but when they practice purely and they still remain generous, even just with a rupee or 2. It's not about millions. It's about giving something that you can give. They continue, something is coming, and it's always enough. Not too much to distract them, but enough to survive. Have you met anyone who's ever starved? Or people are scared, you know, like, yes, I know people who go back even as monastics to work because they think, but they've never even, there's just the fear of that happening. The fear of that. But I could be wrong about it. I could be wrong. I don't know. But I think, honestly, you see, this person, they have to make their own decision, of course, on that. But I remember many years I did have that. The thought came back, am I doing the right thing? And like my family, they would be like, they would ask me like, are you getting a pension? That pension thing, you know? And I was like, no. Oh no. Right? I mean, why should I worry? I don't even know I'll be alive when I should get my pension. I mean, something is going to happen, right? Something is going to happen. I mean, I don't believe I'm going to starve. I don't think so, right? Yeah. I mean, Tibetans didn't get pensions in Tibet, you know, something happened and they were okay. And even nowadays, they're elderly monks and nuns and they're okay. I've never asked them, but they're still there and they never went to work, right? There were elderly monks and nuns and there's, you know, we don't talk about this. It's not like, tell me exactly, you know, finances. No, we don't talk about that. But sometimes it may come up, but usually you don't know. I mean, have you ever heard of an older monk or nun who's like living on the streets? No, you see? And other practitioners either. Because there is this mentality, of course, if someone practices well. I mean, Jesuma Tenzin Pamo, she's starting all these organizations because people give her so much money. I mean, she doesn't need much. So she's giving it to this and that and something else. Right? Yes. Please, go ahead.
Thank you for sharing, first of all, because I also had this question to you specifically, but I wanted to know if you ever had those questions. But I'm not satisfied with your answer because it sounds very black and white. And
sounds very naive.
Some people have, no, not naive. I don't know the specific question of this practitioner.
Yeah.
But what if someone has a real aspiration to do something with the money? You know what I mean? So
but you see, that's what I meant. It said in the very beginning, if you use the money to help others, that's different. But that was not my motivation. It was about fear for my own future. You're right. Oh my gosh, if you have that money now and you want to give it away, I mean, that's great. But how many people work towards having a lot of money? I mean, I think some people do. What's the name of the person who started Microsoft? Bill Gates. He gives away crazy amounts. Amazing. But I think he has also a lot left still. But still, I mean, some people, and in some cultures, in particular in Southeast Asia, like Taiwan and Singapore, they give so much money. Incredible. That kind of generosity, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. They should absolutely, I mean, that's so wonderful. And it's really a good reason to rejoice. But I wasn't thinking like that. I'm saying I was thinking, what happened if I get sick? What happens if I can't eat food? What's happened? Me. It was just all about me. It wasn't like, I want to be really generous. I wish I was really rich so I could give it all away and just have the basic I have left. That was not my thought. And I'm not saying the other person who asked me, I don't know their motivation. They told me that they previously had some help and now they don't have. And there's worry. I mean, it seemed like there was some worry. Should I not rather do what everyone else does and go to work, like my previous classmates and so forth? There's a lot of pressure. When I go to Germany, during COVID, I spent some time in Germany. And like, I could see the pressure on my family members to make some money. Like, what does it mean to be successful? One car doesn't mean successful, at least two. So I could see the pressure that my sister was under. You know, it's just one house is not enough. Swimming pool, and then another house somewhere else, and another swimming pool. So that's considered success in her eyes. The people that she surrounds herself with, that's successful. Right, and a horse and 5 cats. Okay, the cats are right. She's a vet, so I'm sure she has lots of animals. But the point is, there's a lot of, like possessions that she defines herself by. Having her own house. For the first time, I got my own kitchen. Last year, I got my own kitchen. I still remember when I got my own, it's just a corner actually, a cooking corner, but still I call it kitchen. And my own bathroom. The first time I had my own bathroom. That was like, wow, I have my own bathroom. But I was fine even when I didn't have a bathroom. And now it's like, even if I didn't have a bathroom, not the end of the world. Oh yeah, sorry, that fell over. Not the end of the world. So this thing is, I don't have so much to clean. I mean, I don't have like 15 rooms or something. It's pretty quick. So it's simple. I have everything in this small place, and I have more time. I have a lot more time. So the thing is, if I were to talk about just giving it away, then you're absolutely right. Then that wasn't why I was asking. And I think this person was, surely they're generous and they would give away, but I think it was mainly about pressure from parents, pressure from peers. And I think we can all, like most of you have probably been around the Dharma for a long period of time, and you've had that thought, possibly. I don't know your situation, but it does come up. Yeah. So I decided I'm not going to worry about it. I have no pension fund or anything, but I'm just going to continue what I do, and I'm sure I'm fine. And even when I studied, it was really interesting. When I studied, I had nothing. And it was always, like, I always had a sponsor. I remember one sponsor, someone asked me, do you need a sponsor? And it's like, yeah, I don't have anyone. Okay, great. Covered my food and my rent. And one day, it was so bizarre, this person, or this other person who asked me in the first place said, well, your sponsor can't continue, they don't have enough money. And I was like, fine. I swear, 2 days later, a Swiss woman comes up to me and says, do you need a sponsor? And I'm like, as it happens, I just, I used to have one, but he stopped doing it. And she's like, thank you for giving me the opportunity. And I'm like, well, thank you. She's like, no, thank you. And she did until I finished my studies. It was like, I didn't have time to worry. It was so quick. And there's always been something. And then I found some work. I taught for a particular university for some years, so I got some salary through that. And when that finished, something else came up. Even during COVID. And initially I didn't have, it was a bit difficult. Someone made a donation so I could survive for a few months. Actually, someone from Singapore gave a very generous donation for me to be able to pay my way for a few months. And then I was offered some translation, and so it's almost like I feel protected to a certain degree, taking refuge. There is this, and if I, of course, use the money now in an immoral, unethical way, I'm pretty sure I would lose it. Right? Yes.
So now that you brought this topic up, I have another question. I mean, now I understand you were talking about someone who is already studying and thought about quitting the studies. But for me personally, and maybe for others as well, it's the question, when do I know that my will is strong enough, or my desire, when this is kind of the issue.
Good question.
Like, and there are many other things that I enjoy studying, for example,
right.
learning about.
That's a different issue. You're absolutely right. When do I know this is really what I want to do?
Yeah.
And just do that and nothing else. That's different. I mean, in my case, I didn't know that right from the beginning, right? I mean, I came to India to find myself. To find, I mean, it is really a joke, but no, I did actually travel to find myself. I came to Dharamsala, I met Buddhism, and first I was like, oh, this is incredible. I could study it in university, and then just live a normal life, kind of like I wasn't going all the way. And then I became a nun, or I started thinking about becoming a nun, and I had my doubts. And honestly, in the beginning, I was scared. I was scared because I didn't know whether I could continue my whole life doing it. But I went a little bit too fast into it, maybe. I was, in the end, lucky that I didn't disrobe, right? But I was a little bit too young. And I was worried. I was thinking, oh, but if I give this up after 10 years, I just have a high school degree. I'd probably be washing dishes at McDonald's or somewhere, right? That's all. So I did have my thoughts and my worries and so forth. But you're a layperson. You don't need to think you don't need to jump right into it as I did. So what I would suggest is, don't make a decision. In my case, it was like I left it open for a while, and then at some point I really wanted to do it. I didn't really have doubt, but I had worries. However, if you're not doing what I did, so I'm not a good example, but if you just keep it open, keep your options open. But what I meant was, if the Dharma gives you some happiness, don't give it up. And secondly, what would be the alternative? Make lots of money, right? Like, is that really, like, how much money would you want to make and what would you spend it on? Does that give you more happiness than what you spend your time on now? I couldn't find anything to spend that money on. I mean, books are not, I don't need that many books, they're not that expensive. So what else would I buy, right, for it? Build a house or something? Oh no, all this responsibility and all the work and all the cleaning. No, I didn't want that. So you see what I'm saying? You don't have to come to a decision, but think, does this money really give you the happiness you're looking for? What gives you the greatest happiness? In my case, no doubt. Now, there's nothing that gives me greater happiness. Nothing that can give me greater happiness. The kind of happiness I get from this is much greater than having the best coffee in town or a huge bowl of ice cream, whatever, or go out. Oh no, terrible. Just the thought having to go to a beach. Ugh. Especially when the sun is up. No. Anyway, that's just me, and I wanted to share that. And this person may look at it differently. I don't know. I'm just saying this is how I see it. But I find it always like when there's like a promise, when it's like the grass is greener on the other side kind of thing, to really imagine, is it greener? To check, right? We all have that. Like, oh, maybe if I were in the West, if I made more money, I could just relax and take a vacation. That's not usually what happens, is it? So I really tried to think, what would I buy with all that money? And in the end, I couldn't find anything that I wanted to buy more than do what I do right now. And you need to just ask yourself, what's the case for you? Yeah, and then make a decision. Yes, Aid?
I mean, just a few things. One was, like many people here in downtown over the years who've wanted to stay here the whole time, but eventually they didn't have money. They've had to go home and work. And that's one of the benefits of having Dharma centres in the West and now online study programs. It's not like...
Yeah, that's true.
You're either here or not here.
That is true. No, I didn't mean you have to be here and then all your money runs out and then you're desperate and you have to go to work. I never said... No, I wasn't talking about being here, but giving up the Dharma...
Oh, giving up the Dharma.
Yeah. No, it wasn't about...
I mean, you can work and practice Dharma.
Of course you can. Yeah, of course you can. No, I'm just saying... I gave you my example because it's a specific example, right? A particular...
Asking, should I give up Dharma?
Let me just check the question. Wait, let me just make sure I didn't misunderstand the question. Okay. Wait. Yep. All right, the answer is the question is a little, okay. Actually, I didn't answer the question exactly. I had it different in mind. Okay, so something I wanted to ask you. How do you differentiate between genuinely, but I know this person's background, the being uncertain about, should I continue with the Dharma, should I do something else? So how do you differentiate between genuinely being content with whatever resources you have and just slipping into a comfort zone? So there's this pressure to find another job, to earn more. But just recently I've been reflecting and I realized that a lot of it comes from a desire for more rather than an actual need. So lately I've been trying to remind my mind or my brain to focus on the work I already have and my studies, which I'm already engaging in at the present moment. So from other conversations I had with this person, there was a bit of like, should I do this? Should I, work? So when am I to need more? And I also know the peer pressure, they happen to be quite young and so forth. So that's why I thought to bring it up. Yeah, it's a little bit different. The question is a little bit different. But yeah, should I just leave everything behind, like the study and everything, and basically do the job that I'm expected to do? But yes, no, Aidan, I'm not saying, I totally agree with you. There's certain, you may want to work, for instance. If there's someone who wants to become a monk or nun, then that is very difficult. It's not really an option, but you can still work. Some monks and nuns work. But the point is just to ask yourself, Is it about the money? Is it about the fear of not being okay? Or do you just want to work and you enjoy doing it and you study the Dharma at the same time and so forth? Aiden, does that kind of... Go ahead, you wanted to ask.
I mean, just, I have many friends who'd like to be doing what I do, right?
Pardon?
I have many friends who'd like to be doing what I do, which is they've been here for a long time.
Right.
And they've been here and they had to go back, and some work part-time and come for a few months. And
Yes.
hard,
Yeah, that's fine. Sure.
But I mean, I think, you're very fortunate if you can actually just come here and be here, let's say permanently, to use that word, right?
I'm very fortunate to be able to come here, yes, and I have to repeat it because for the camera. I have to repeat.
I'm very fortunate to 25 years coming to Dharamsala,
right? Right. Yes.
It's not normal, I don't think that's normal.
Right. So yeah, you're in this position. You're very fortunate to come here, and so I was too. But in my case, it was I was fortunate. But I think also being a monk or nun, there is a special protection. Now, if you want to become a monk or nun, I believe there is. Whether you take the risk is a different matter. I mean, I know some people, and in my case, it was also my last money was about to be, gone, and then something came up, and it was okay. So it was always okay. So I believe there's also the blessing of the practice. But of course, there are many different people, and I'm not saying make your own decision. You want to do other things, you study other things, of course do that. Whatever is, makes your mind happy. But my main point was, what I was trying to say was just this fear. I was only talking about this fear. This fear that comes from the West in particular, safety, security, and it's never as secure and safe as you think. They may just cut your pension or something, right? And if you enjoy one thing, money should not be an issue to worry about. That's it. But of course, if you enjoy working and you enjoy your job, by all means, continue doing what you're doing. Yeah. And so some people, unfortunately, they may have to leave from here, and they may not want to leave. In that case, they definitely have to do work. But then work and come back, or work and do some online stuff. That also works. Yeah. Yes. Did you want to ask something further?
Maybe it's going too far. It's more like a
well, think about.
Topic. I mean, I have my own answer to it. But you made it clear now that it was about this fear of giving up the comfort zone.
Yeah.
I personally believe that my life is my path, and I need to know what's the right thing. So it doesn't make me giving up my job and studying the Dharma doesn't mean that I become enlightened. So I can still be a lay person.
Yeah, exactly.
From a different
That's true. That's true. Absolutely. So I understood that question to mean identified with that question because I remembered that worry.
Yeah.
That was it. That was the only thing. So about that, maybe I should have been a little clearer. Yeah. So just that worry part and what the West suggests us to do and not to do and so forth. Like my relative, my uncle. So, what are you going to do with all the study now? Nothing. Right? I mean, especially the West, like especially Germany, we all know. Okay, great. Okay, I meant to do this at the very beginning by going back to the great masters, of course, who hopefully we can study and practice. So, that's that. So, as such, even if those who just take the Dharma to become, I don't know, great scholars and so forth. So that should not be our motivation. There's nothing wrong being a scholar, but our main focus should be on practice. As such, even if we were to strive hard in the great vehicle, so in particular when it comes to the universal vehicle, the Mahayana, the universal vehicle, they would fail to extract its value. So if we study a great deal but never gain clear confidence in how what we have learned connects to our own life, then even the most advanced practices of the universal vehicle will not truly benefit us. And they're so beautiful. These practices are so beautiful. So we may meditate on great compassion, recite prayers and mantra, or even spend extended periods of time in retreat. But if we cannot carry our understanding into daily life, our practice has no real direction. So you meditate on great compassion, but great compassion doesn't become a part of you. I'm not saying like you meditate one day and suddenly you have great compassion. It's not as easy, right? Of course not. It takes time, but there should be some improvement that you notice maybe after a week. A week is too short, but a month or a year and so forth. To really check, have I made improvements? Do I not get angry that quickly? Do I not? That's so important. That's the whole point. Otherwise, don't meditate. Do exercise, something else. I mean, just sitting there, might as well move a little bit. Because the mind, yeah. So therefore, even meditating on great compassion, recite prayers and mantras. I mean, again here, think of the meaning of each prayer. Every time it should be you do it for the first time. That's the problem with prayers. After a while, we're not even thinking, we're daydreaming. Extended periods of time in retreat. Again, these are incredible opportunities. Spending that time, quality time, but of course to transform the mind, not just to do the ritual, whatever you're doing. I mean, sometimes it can become ritualistic, But if we cannot carry our understanding into daily life, our practice has no real direction. It will not transform the mind, and much of our effort will be wasted. I say much because I say imprints. But, just imprints, yeah, that's great. We may even create the causes for future practice, but we need to transform our mind now. It's like being prescribed medicine, but then taking pills at random, ignoring the doctor's precise instructions about which medicine to take, when to take it, what foods to eat, and what to avoid based on our actual condition. Without following the treatment properly, we will not recover. Unfortunately, Arya Nagarjuna is not going to send us a WhatsApp and say like, okay, now this is what you need to do and so forth. But based on the external teachings, we get in touch with our internal guru. I talked about that before. So you develop that wisdom. You eventually know. And I said that before in class, I think, but just to say it again, because it connects to this here. I've had many times when I thought, how should I act now? I should ask my Lama. And then I was like, do I not know the answer? I studied all this time. Do I not know the answer? So I sat down, and sooner or later I was like, he's probably going to say such and such. Or if he doesn't, for me, this is a good answer. Right? It worked for me. I found the answer. I never, ever, I have the contact of my Lama. I can easily send him WhatsApp message. I do sometimes ask other things, but I've never, ever been in a situation where I didn't find, because it's all there, right? Someone is annoying, you practice patience. Someone is, you do, I'm like this, you do such an, it's all there. It's not that much. You've got generosity and ethics and so forth. It's all very complicated. But when it comes down to what you need to do, what you need to do on a daily basis, it's not that much. We all have similar afflictions: anger, arrogance, what else? Attachment, so much attachment, desire, and so forth. So we know kind of the rough antidotes, what to do. Whether we do it or not is a different matter. But of course, sometimes we need to ask our Lama when it comes to, is this retreat better or that retreat better? That may be difficult. But in this situation, I have this problem, what antidote to apply? And we usually know, right? And that gets better over time. Initially, no. Initially, that's why we study. The more we study and the more we try to, whatever we study, apply this. How is this relevant to me? I mean, I'm reading this and it's like, what do I care about? No, I don't. But in the beginning, I was like that, this is so dry and boring. I had that sense, it's like, and then this Buddha Palita, I don't even know the person. I don't even know what they look like. Each depiction looks differently. And then I tried to get it onto an emotional level. This was a real person, this incredible person who wrote these incredible texts that are still around. I mean, no way anything I would do exist longer than a year or whatever, right? These are like incredible writings, incredible, because they were true practitioners. So I tried to connect to them on a more emotional level and feel like this gratitude to them. Because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here. The Dharma would be gone. The Buddha is no longer around. And they passed on, well, when they lived, they passed on the teachings of the Buddha, explained it, passed it on to others. And so all these people from then until now, I'm so grateful to. And they based their understanding on a few masters, not that many. It would be really confusing if there were like 1,000 masters we were now learning about. It'd be like, oh, yawn kind of, right? It'd be so boring. But that's not true. It's just a few of them. And to generate that sense of appreciation and like a connection, and I want to read their text, and I want to, the little I understand, I rejoice in that, and the rest I don't. Well, hopefully I will one day. So it's like you connect to everything on an emotional level. It becomes all relevant, right? So today, and how's my prayer? Am I doing this? Whatever I learn, is there in the back of my mind, is there kind of like, how is this relevant to me? How, whatever, am I really doing that? To remind myself again and again, Lama Tsongkhapa reminds us. I know this intellectually, but I forget. I'm busy with other stuff. So it's reminding me again. So in that way, everything we learn, in every moment, we can somehow, at least, it's not like you stop everything and you practice that, and you read something else and you stop everything and you practice that. That would be ridiculous. But somehow, make it matter to you. So it becomes part of it. And then when the moment is right, you remember in that moment, oh, these were the great masters I heard about. His Holiness mentions them. Wow, I shouldn't forget. And if I get some reading, if I read a quote by them, I read it very differently. It's not like, some quote, right? It's like, wow, this is Kamalashila, this is Padapalita. I know these, I have heard about them. I remember them. I pay attention to what they've got to say. So in that way, they're just little tiny steps, but you take it to heart. Anyway, okay. So therefore we must strive to understand how to traverse the stages of path. The stages of path, yeah. That's Dhamma Tsongkhapa. So the conclusion is straightforward. The only way to avoid these pitfalls is to develop a clear grasp of the path itself. Traversing the path, so to continue with our practice, means knowing where to begin. Where am I right now? Where to begin? Which practices to emphasize at each stage? Is my anger an issue right now? Is my attachment more of an issue? Is my envy, whatever, more of an issue? So emphasize each stage and how each stage connects to the next in a gradual journey toward Buddhahood. That's why we learn about that. We're not on the Bodhisattva path, but we know this is what becomes relevant one day. This is what becomes relevant. So practice a little bit as much as we can. And there's so many opportunities. Generosity, ethical conduct, and so forth. It also means applying what we have learned to daily life, especially in relation to our strongest mental afflictions and most pressing problems. Yeah, that's also important. The most pressing problems, the greatest afflictions, right? What is it that I learned today? It doesn't have to be the whole thing, right? Something, we pick something that I could take on, that I could pay more attention. So this pushes us again, just helps our practice, in other words. Whatever we studied, it doesn't have to be the whole thing, but something. With this understanding, our study becomes meaningful, our reflections bring certainty, and our practice gains clear direction and purpose. Yeah. All right. Although, and now, so this is the general kind of advice Lama Tsongkhapa gives us. Okay, we have the charioteers in between, but that was written like, you know who they are kind of thing. Didn't explain them, but I explained them. So that's the part, this is what you need to do. Really follow my instructions. Don't just learn. I mean, mine means Lama Tsongkhapa's. Follow Lama Tsongkhapa's instructions. Know how to study. It's not about amassing knowledge. Of course, it's about applying as much as we can. All right. So now Nagarjuna says, now Lama Tsongkhapa says, although Nagarjuna explains, and I don't say Arya Nagarjuna because that's Geshe Jimba's text that I pasted in here. So although Nagarjuna explains partial aspects of the path in numerous texts. So yes, emptiness he explained in the fundamental wisdom, but he also talked about the Bodhisattva path, the methods, in many different texts. He mentioned that, and he has so many writings. 3 treatises present the overall body of the path. 3 particular texts, both the profound and vast aspects. So the first of them is the Precious Garland. Precious Garland has been translated into English. As for how the precious garland presents the path, lines such as the roots of this are an awakening mind, and all the practices preceded by compassion were already cited above. Okay, so in the previous part that we studied in the first term, those were cited. So Lama Tsongkhapa notes that although Arya Nagarjuna composed so many different works, many of them address only particular aspects of the Buddhist path. So how to practice generosity, how to practice great compassion, bodhicitta, great generosity, and so forth. Among his writings, however, there are 3 treatises: Precious Garland, Praise to the Dharmadhatu, or Ultimate Expanse. Dharmadhatu, I use Geshe Jimba's translation. He says Ultimate Expanse, but usually it's called, or often it's called Praise to the Dharmadhatu. And then Compendium of Sutras. Compendium of Sutras. These are the 3 main texts by Nagarjuna, Arya Nagarjuna, that present the entire path in a comprehensive way. These works explain both the profound aspects, such as the wisdom realizing emptiness, and the vast aspect, such as the practices of great compassion and bodhicitta. So fundamental wisdom, anyway, it's all about emptiness. But you can supplement it, you can add definitely from these 3 texts, and that's what Acharya Chandrakirti did. He took fundamental wisdom and these 3, and based on that, he composed the text Entering the Middle Way. So in that way, he combined not wisdom with also understanding how to practice in terms of the method path, the method aspect. Arya Nagarjuna's Precious Garland, Ratnavali. Here, this is the translation. There are 2 translations that I noted down. Sometimes I only gave 1. If they're really, really old and they're like a little difficult to read, I didn't mention them. But there are 2. I think they're both really good. Is a vast treatise composed in the form of advice to a king. But its guidance extends far beyond the concerns of rulers. The work integrates practical instructions on ethics, generosity, and compassion, with deep reflections on emptiness and dependent arising. So really beautiful work. It's so, what's the word? Diverse. It talks about daily, kind of what you should do on a daily basis as a ruler. But many of the things that you taught to a ruler also apply to ordinary beings, to ordinary people. And of course, it talks about emptiness and dependent arising. So for rulers, or here in this case the king, Arya Nagarjuna advises policies rooted in justice, non-violence, and the promotion of virtue. You can all, benefit from that. For practitioners, he emphasizes the cultivation of the awakening mind, the 6 perfections, and the wisdom realizing emptiness. Because of this twofold scope, so it's got worldly kind of affairs mentioned, also in terms of the Dharma, and then actually going right into like dedicated practice, like leaving everything behind kind of idea. The Precious Garland has been treasured in the tradition of the universal vehicle as both a practical manual for leading a meaningful life. So there's a lot of, you lead an ordinary life. I mean, you live in a city, you work and so forth. There's so much you can take from this. I mean, maybe you have to change it a little bit, like taking the metro or taking the bus and so forth. But, ethical conduct, patience and so forth. I mean, it all applies to any situation. So in that case, it's beneficial, but also a practical manual for leading a meaningful life, and as a profound philosophical text presenting the Bodhisattva's path. So you can benefit from all of that because, as you said before, we can practice anywhere. You can have a job, you live in a city, you have a family, you can practice the Dharma. We believe, I'm so busy, but every moment is a situation where we can apply the Dharma. Yeah. Okay, so that's just about Nagarjuna's Precious Garland, to introduce you to this beautiful text. And in the introductory or salutation section, Lama Tsongkhapa had already cited 2 quotations from the Precious Garland, which he just briefly refers to here. Just the roots of this are and so forth. So what are these quotations? The first one, when given in full in the introductory section, describes the 3 principal causes of a bodhisattva. Just to remind you, if one aspires for oneself and for the world to attain the unsurpassed enlightenment, The roots of this are an awakening mind. Number one, bodhicitta, awakening mind. As firm as Mount Meru, king of mountains. Compassion extending in all directions, and gnosis, or exalted wisdom, not rooted in duality. That means realizing emptiness. Well, not directly, but not rooted in duality means here not rooted in the two extremes. Extreme of nihilism and extreme of reification. So this explains that to generate uncontrived bodhicitta, the mind of awakening, to enter the bodhisattva path, which relies on two aspirations, to be of greatest benefit to all sentient beings and to attain full awakening. In order to do so most effectively, that's what bodhicitta is like, right? You want to be of greatest benefit to all sentient beings. You want to help them overcome suffering, help them to guide them, basically, to show them the best way. And in order to do so effectively, you want to become enlightened. Practitioners must cultivate three principal causes. Contrived bodhicitta. So before it's uncontrived, first you kind of make an effort in generating that mind with A and B, as mentioned before, wanting to benefit all sentient beings, and therefore you want to become fully enlightened, which is based on these same two aspirations. It is firm, yet it is contrived. It does not yet arise spontaneously. So you need to practice in that. And then great compassion, the essential cause of bodhicitta, extending impartially to each and every sentient being. And that deep, strong compassion, wish for them to be free from suffering and its causes, and wishing to help them to bring this about, right? And it seems totally overwhelming, but we can all generate that for at least a few seconds, right? We can, just for a few seconds. And that shows we can do it even for longer. We just need to keep up. And then wisdom, a discerning awareness, conceptually realizing emptiness, unentangled with the two extremes of reification and nihilism. So, not believing things exist as solidly as they appear to us, as findable right in front of us, but also not believing they don't exist at all. Both are extremes. All right. So so here Lama Tsongkhapa is just saying, you already went through. So he's basically introducing to us the precious garlands, some of the quotes based on which Acharya Chandrakirti composed this text, which we're studying. So he's saying, pay attention to this. He's talking of contrived bodhicitta. He's talking about great compassion. He's talking about wisdom. We can all practice that. As he said earlier, take that and practice that. These are the essential practices if we want to follow the universal vehicle. Might as well do the second quotation and then we'll stop for today. Form emphasizes great compassion as the root or foundation of the other two factors. Right? So we did that already during the first term, or during the salutation, or during the homage section. But here Lama Tsongkhapa is just reminding us, don't forget about it. It's still relevant. Right? So great compassion. In the scriptures of the great or universal vehicle, in which are taught all the practices, stainless wisdom and so on, preceded by compassion, what sane person would deride such teachings? So this is basically saying, it indicates that the texts of the universal vehicle teach that all practices, such as bodhicitta and the stainless wisdom realizing emptiness, are preceded by great compassion. Right? Stainless wisdom, all the other practices that includes the awakening mind, they're all preceded by great compassion. Great compassion is the root of definitely every practice of the universal vehicle. So this, whether we're moving in the right direction, it's all about, are we practicing that? Are we practicing great compassion? And there's these beautiful, and we went through them before, these reasonings, why it makes sense that no one is a stranger, that everyone has been so close to us, been so kind to us, and even now, others are equally important for our own benefit. Others are equally important. We have to accumulate the karma, of course, but the karma to drink a great cup of coffee, well, you need someone to make the coffee, or someone to produce the coffee, someone to get the coffee and grind it, right? So you need others as well. There's not just karma. I emphasized that last time. There's not just karma. Karma can only ripen when there's certain circumstances. Yeah, there's always two aspects. And therefore other sentient beings are the second aspect. And to look after ourselves and ignoring everyone else, the karma is not a good one. And we definitely don't actualize our fullest potential. So great compassion doesn't mean ignoring ourselves. It means that's the only way. That's the root of everything. And if our practice doesn't include that, it's not really going in the right direction. So it's pretty simple. We can all understand great compassion. Practicing it is difficult. But taking little baby steps, slowly it'll become stronger. I mean, His Holiness was once like us. His Holiness did it. Other people did it. I'm not saying we're like His Holiness, but we have the same basics. And one of the main problems is low self-confidence. Low self-confidence. Now, you really, when you study this, you learn there's no reason for low self-confidence. We distinguish between people in a really weird way. We believe them inherently maybe better or inherently this. But once you study, you realize you're actually just like a Buddha, except you're totally obstructed. Right? So it gives you that confidence. The Buddha did it, I can do it as well. This is not arrogance. It's being realistic. I can do this. The sky's the limit. I just need to get over my laziness, my procrastination and all that. Yeah. This indicates, okay, after recalling these two earlier quotations, Lama Tsongkhapa cites yet other verses from the Precious Garland that describe the qualities of or practices of a bodhisattva who has developed these three essential factors. And that's where we continue the different perfections and so forth. So once these three, so it's basically showing us very clearly, first you have these three, that's what you start off with, that's your focus. And once you're on the bodhisattva path, you keep studying, you keep practicing these three, but you also focus on generosity and so forth. So all this will be described on Thursday. All right, thank you very much. So to make sure we don't waste all the positive potential we've accumulated today, let's first of all, of course, pray for the long life of our great masters who embody the teachings. Here, the prayer, though, literally directed towards His Holiness, but think of all great masters, His Holiness and all the other ones, and then, of course, dedicating it towards generating bodhicitta and an understanding of emptiness. In this snow-encircled land, you are the source of benefit and bliss. Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, please remain in life until samsara ends. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. May the precious view of emptiness, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.